Welcome again to our show, Diaspora, Home and Abroad. And before we start, I want to just make a few observations. I want to thank all the people who responded, especially following our first episode. And you've given a lot of information, a lot of suggestions on how to improve the show. And I really thank you so much. Second, I want to, one of our viewers from Kenya, James was, had this question: how is Diaspora Home and Abroad different from Diaspora Live Show? The difference is this: recently I moved back to Standard where I started to host 2 shows. One, Diaspora Live Show, which was I was hosting some time back before COVID-19. And even during COVID-19, we continued because what happened is that because travel became a problem, so we were recording our show on Zoom. So that's the only reason why Diaspora Live Show looks similar to this show. But yeah, Diaspora Live Show is coming back, but this time it's coming back and it's going to be powered by KTN Kenya and KTN Home, but it's the same host. Again, the difference is that Diaspora Live Show is going to be more of special features, documentaries about the life and times of Kenyans living abroad. So a lot of what you're going to be seeing when it comes back sometime next month is on location recording and a lot of scripting. But this Diaspora Home and Abroad is basically what we call in the NGO world a talk shop where we discuss also very important issues that affect Kenyans living away from home, but also now we bring in voices from Kenya. So those are mainly the differences. So that's how in future we are going to be, you're going to be seeing this. And having said that, now our title today is really the international schooling, but a lot of our discussions are going to come from the issues that have emerged from the recently concluded Kenya Students and Scholars Association. This commonly known as KESA. KESA hosts annual meetings to discuss emerging issues around education. And this program was started by, among others, Professor Tiso, who is going to be one of our guests today. But the current president is Professor Jerono Rotich, and assisted by Professor Fred Nafuho, who are here today to speak about how it was. And I'm also privileged today to host Bob Mwiti. Bob Mwiti is familiar to you guys. He's the founder and director of the Airlift. There's so much talk about, I've had so many questions about the Airlift, and that's why I invited Bob today on the show to just give us a sense of how his program is going in view of the COVID-19 restrictions around international students, especially those ones coming from Kenya or other places to America. So that's a long introduction, but bear with me. I have lined up very, very great discussions, and so I'll straight away go into it, and I'll go directly to Professor Rotich to give us just a brief account of what happened during the KESA conference before we talk about the wider issues around education. Professor.
Greetings, Mr. Wamarwa, and thank you again to my panelists. As you have introduced me, I am Professor Jerono Rotich. I'm a professor and department chair at North Carolina Central University in Durham. Currently, I'm the president of the Kenya Scholars and Studies Association. Something else that I do related to international students is I'm the CEO and founder of KESIT Foundation, that is Kenya Students in Diaspora Foundation, that focuses on supporting, mentoring international students. We have mentors, we have resources, we have networks. We've actually even helped students who are going for interviews. So we do a lot of things around those scholars. But in reference to CASA, this was our 13th annual conference. And we greatly want to thank our founders, Professor Otiso, Professor Manyara, Professor Koti, Professor Mutabi, for the great work that they've done. So for the last 13 years, we've been holding our conferences, except for last year because of COVID, where we were not able to meet. We have a great team that works with me. We have Professor Mose, who is a vice president. We have the treasurer, who is Dr. Omara. We have the secretary, who is Dr. Donye. And then we have a governing council. We also have the advisory board. So we work together as a team. And we just hosted our 13th annual conference, which was actually very successful, given that we were doing this in the midst of COVID. And our theme was redefining roles for impact through scholarship and engagement. So we were looking at what is the role of diaspora scholars? What can they do in terms of change, redefining, how can we make impact in our country here among our community through our scholarship and engagement? So with that, we had an amazing conference. It was from the 11th through the 12th in Dallas, Texas. And our keynote speaker, of course, it was opened by our ambassador in Washington, D.C., Ambassador Lazarus Amaya, who was actually very gracious to bring a delegation of 3. He came along with him. He brought Mr. Ndegwa, who is the chief for immigration, just in case people had issues, because students were there, faculty were there, community leaders were there. And some of the issues that they have is questions about immigration. He also brought along with him Mr. David Koech, who is a first counselor, interim, who is in charge of education and diaspora affairs. That is a person that has been working very closely with us during COVID, with international students, the challenges that we've had. We were trying to raise money, we're trying to advocate for help loans. So those have been very extremely helpful. On the Kenyan side, we had a great delegation that was led by the PS Nabukwesi, and he had a great team. Actually, I was really impressed by the passion that our PS Ambassador Nabukwesi, who is a principal secretary for State Department of University and Research, who came along with 5 members of his team, key members in his education area. One was Dr. Darius Mogaka, who was not able to come, but he's the director of university education. He also brought with him Dr. Tonio Mwasa, who is in charge of the Kenya Innovation Week. He also brought Mr. Ringera, who is the CEO of HELP, Higher Education Loans Board. Dr. Agnes Wahome also joined us, who is the director of COOPS. And then, of course, we had Lux, who is the associate quality PA and also does some quality education in his office. So we had a great team of representation from the from the Kenyan government, and that really spoke volumes because we felt the support. We felt that the fact that we were supported by our U.S. Embassy. Our U.S. Embassy has always been very supportive of the work that we do as scholars and students. And then we had our keynote speakers who were from local. Again, our keynote speaker, we had Ambassador Amaya, we had Ambassador Nabukwesi, we had Dr. Bore, who is an associate professor of counseling and chair at the University of North Texas. We had our very own who is here, who did an amazing job, Professor Frederick Muya Nafuko, who was actually able to do above and beyond, because after the conference, he actually took our entire delegation from Kenya to tour the University of Texas A&M in College Station. And then out of that, they were able to sign a MOU. I'm going to let him, he's going to speak to that later on. So I'm going to let him speak to that because it was a very productive and great trip. We had Dr. Shireen Obare, who was the Dean of the Joint School of Nanoscience and Nanoengineering at North Carolina A&T and UNC Greensboro. And then we had our young fellow who does an amazing work, Dr. David Washira, who works in the public sector, who's a public sector specialist at the World Bank. We had great attendees. Our conference was sponsored by World Remit. They actually sponsored our dinner on Friday, and the focus was transferring your knowledge, they're really focusing on supporting our students and supporting our scholars, and we'll continue to work with them in reference to supporting students. We also have the Education Loans Board, and then Kenya Commercial Bank. Don't let me leave them out. Kenya Commercial Bank also sponsored our program. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Professor Rotich. So, Professor Fred Nafuho, let's come back to you because you are the host. You played the host to this group of Kenyans. Interestingly, I think even with COVID, this seems to be one of the most attended and honored conference so far. Because you have this heavy big wigs, when you're talking about Nabokwesi, that's the PS. When you talk about the ambassador, those are really what we call, the people who make laws and who make decisions. I'm happy that you hosted that such a very, very important group. But speak to us about just generally what were really the basic objectives of the conference this year, as we know, COVID-19 has really changed everything. Go ahead, Professor Nafuho.
Chris Wamalwa, thank you so much. Again, my name is Fred Muya Nafuko. I'm a professor of education administration and human resource development at Texas A&M University. I also serve as the Senior Associate Dean for Faculty Affairs in the College of Education and Human Development. And you're right, with the COVID-19 pandemic experience, when I was invited to go to this conference, I really had to think, do I really risk and go to this conference? And I kept on consulting with Dr. Rotich and say, are you sure this conference is going to take place? In fact, at one time I suggested, why can't we do a virtual conference? However, what motivated me most was when the program was sent out. The theme of the conference focused on engaging scholarship and outreach. I think the work that we do in higher education, those of us in the university, we stay in the ivory tower. And the best way we can get our work known out there is to engage with people from all aspects of life. And so I like this conference because it was just not just scholars. I would say it was scholar practitioners. We had people who are lawyers. We had people from the healthcare profession. We had people from all walks of life. And the conference attracted scholars from all over the United States. We had some colleagues from Canada, for example. And so the program inspired me to go to the conference. And when I saw the delegation that was coming from Kenya, led by Ambassador Simon Nabokwesi and his team, that gave me courage to go to the conference. And so we observed protocol. We had our masks on. We only removed very short time when we are eating, and then we would put them on. The hotel was very supportive also. If you didn't want to sit in a big group eating, you could actually make orders and they would deliver to your room. So there were precautions that were taken by the hotel. The CASA leadership took all the precautions. So I would like to encourage colleagues out there who are scared of COVID. If you observe the CDC observations, it can work. What I found very, very profound about this conference was the ambassador's team and the team from Kenya. Every time I go to a conference, I'm usually engaged. I take notes, I listen, I attend every session. That's what I saw at this conference. People were engaged. I guess people had missed conferences for almost close to 2 years. Since people were engaged, I would see Ambassador Lazarus Amayo taking notes, and I was seated next to Ambassador Nabokwesi, who was busy taking notes. And actually those notes were very useful. Later on, when I invited the entire delegation to visit Texas A&M University, and when we ended up signing a memorandum of understanding, which I'll talk about later on, I saw very engaged team from the Kenyan community, not only here in the United States, but from home too. And I think the grand challenges we face as a society, Kenyan society, American society, require that we come together and share our expertise and share solutions and think critically. And I think, Kesa, I want to commend you and your leadership. And as we always say, K4TISO and your team, we stand on the shoulders of the giants who came before us, like you and others before us. You talked about the airlift in the early 1960s. We stand on the shoulders of those Kenyans who came to the United States and made a difference and returned home. Some stayed here, but they made a difference. And so we appreciate that.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Nafuho. Professor Kefa Otiso, I know you, when we are talking about this and where we are right now in terms of KESA, you should actually take a special pride in this because you, apart from just being a co-founder, you've really given a lot of time and inputs, intellectual and otherwise in this. This year, I wasn't even very sure that it's going to happen, but it happened. And like it happens, at times, what you really expect to happen happens. And so we're talking about one of the most successful conferences so far. I speak to the original objectives of KESA and where we are right now. Do you think you're really achieving your objectives?
Yeah, thank you, Chris, for the opportunity to reflect on the conference. I feel like a parent. You have these kids and you raise them, but you don't really know where they will go. But I have to say that for this particular kid, the potential and the objectives are more than been achieved. I remember when we were having a conversation about creating it in a conference in Philadelphia many years back, and then taking about 4 or 5 years to actually get it registered. So it gets registered in 2007. The first conference is in 2008. That first conference actually had more family members than scholars. I still have a picture of it, and people used to wonder whether, in fact, the thing will ever take off. But when God gives you an idea and a vision, if you stick with it, it will actually come to pass. And we are very thankful for that. And we have actually seen from the very beginning, you could actually see that there were supernatural forces at work here in terms of even getting the very first, keynote speaker, who was Dr. Chendai Fresh, who was then the Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs. And as soon as her name appeared on the conference program, a lot of people fell in line. People like, this is a serious thing, we need to attend. And from then on, I think it has grown by leaps and bounds. And of course, I have to thank my co-founders and also thank the Kenyan scholars who have actually been coming to the conference over the years. More importantly, the goal was to mentor scholars like ourselves to grow intellectually and make sure that we make a mark in this country, and as well as, of course, promoting research and scholarship on Kenya, which actually has also ended up happening, and of course has ended up giving us a community of Kenyan scholars in the United States. We have almost like 400 people. Of course, they don't all show up, but we have a significant number of scholars who are now engaged in American universities and even in North America, in Canada. And just to give you a sense, the very first graduate students who came to the conference are now associate professors. To me, that's how I measure the success of the organization. And of course, if you look at the multiplier effect of those individuals over time, the impact has been commendable. What I'm also quickly reminded of as I come to a close is I actually tried to find a job in Kenya. I will not mention a university, but I couldn't get a job. I was actually writing my thesis, and I was doing it in Nairobi, looking at slum settlements in Mathare and Kibera. And so while I was there, I said, okay, let me go to these local universities here and try to find a job. And I remember being told that I was overqualified, not being given an opportunity to even teach until the last week, when kind of people knew that I was about to leave the country. That is actually how I decided to find a job in the US. And ironically, this thing has turned full circle. And I thank God that actually I've ended up doing, in some ways, more work for Kenya here than I've actually perhaps could have done in the country. I don't know, but I just believe that was what I was meant to be here for, and that is the contribution. So I'm very thankful, and even more importantly, thankful that actually now we are into the next generation of leadership as well. Jerono came as a student, and now she is my boss, you know? So you can't ask for anything better than that, you know, and it's better to make these changes when you are there so you can still mentor the new leadership and make sure that the organization continues to thrive. But I'm actually pretty sure that God willing, and we see no reason for him not to be willing, this thing is going to continue being here and helping people for generations to come. Thank you.
Thanks, Professor. In fact, no, we are still going to talk about how you guys can give back to the country that made you who you are, in spite of the fact that you tried and failed. Even me, I tried some. I never had a really, I never had a really a job in Kenya that you'll say you can write home about. But at least no, who I am, and you guys are who you are because of that little country. You know, the country that we love, even as we are hating it because of what's going on. But I'll come back to you to talk about how you scholars can give back to the country. But let me bring in Bob Mwiti. Bob Mwiti, like I said, is very important because you can't talk about international education, especially in view of COVID-19, without Bob Mwiti, because I've been following this young man very closely. And in spite of the challenges that have taken place in the last 2 years, Bob Mwiti has really continued to bring Kenyan students, international students here in the US to study. So I think it's important for us to speak to Bob because, you know, as viewers who realize, the new year has started in America. We are in September. We are ending September. The new year is in force right now. So I want to bring in Bob to talk to us about initially, you know, basically what his program is all about before we even delve into the challenges that, you know, you guys are facing in your in institutions because of COVID-19. Bob. Welcome, brother, and please speak to us about your program.
All right, asante sana. Thank you so much, Chris Omalo. My name is Bob Mwiti, and I'm the programs director of a company called Upstake America, based out of Tampa, Florida. I'm also a co-founder of a program called the Kenya Airlift Program. And basically what we do in the Kenya Airlift Program, we bring brilliant students who want to come and study IT-related master's programs here in the US. And so what we do is not only that we bring students here, what we do is we source for their funding in terms of graduate assistantship awards with the schools that we work with. And also part of funding also comes from unsecured international student loans. We do have official partners that work with us. One of them is called Empower Financing. They are one of the two lenders out there who lend to international students, and they lend unsecured international student loans. So we source for funding in that aspect. Also, what we do in that program is that because I personally came to the US as an international student about 10 years ago, and I faced a lot of challenges, especially transitioning from being on a student visa to working in corporate America. And that's really one of the reasons why I was very encouraged to form the program. So what we do is we train the students on the side on IT job skills as they pursue their masters. So we have some really, really amazing programs. We have programs on robotics, process automation. We have programs on artificial intelligence and machine learning. We have programs on Oracle Cloud Financials. So these are really highly marketable job skills out there that would enable those students who are coming through our Kenya Airlift program to be able to get good jobs. Now, also part of what we do, because as a company, we are a consulting firm. We do our core business here in the US actually is IT training programs and placement services. So basically what we are trying to do in the Kenya Airlift program is also to help those who come through the program, not just to get funded in the schools and get trained. Also, we support them in terms of helping them out getting good jobs in corporate America. Now, also part of what we have in the Kenya Airlift program, which is very unique, is also that because we realized that that whole process of coming to the US is actually very, very expensive. I mean, you can't just wake up today and decide to come to America. I mean, it's quite a long process and actually requires money because there's some exams that you have to do. For example, GMAT, GRE, maybe if the schools require TOEFL exams, then you have to do them. You have to pay for visa fees, service fee, and of course you have to pay for air tickets and all that. So what we did in the Kenya Airlift program is that we formed a circle, which is called the Airlift Circle. And basically what it does is the circle supports the students' relocation expenses, so that now anybody who's joining the program, they join the circle, they contribute a certain amount into the circle, and then the circle gives them the money to take care of all those expenses that are incurred in that whole process of relocating to the US. And of course, also even once they get here, because sometimes also when, let's say, for example, when a student gets funding from this end in terms of their graduate assistantship awards or unsecured international student loans, they don't just, I mean, they are not, given to the student immediately. So it takes time, maybe a month or so. The professors here, they know how the school works. So that time also, because the student may need money for their upkeep, for their rent, that money from the circle also takes care of that. So that's really what we are trying to do. The program is not just for anybody out there, it's for really brilliant Kenyans who want to come and study IT-related master's programs here in the US.
Thanks, Bob. I thank you. Kenyans, this guy is in charge of scholarships. So please get in. We are going to give his information out because we want as many Kenyans as possible to get scholarships to come and study in the US. Professor Rotich, let me come back to you because I remember during COVID-19, you are so involved with you are actually surrounded with so many Kenyan international students here in the US. I don't know how you, at some point, because of the frustrations and because of everything that was going on, I know we tried the best that we can individually and collectively, because I remember, the kind of the many letters and that you're sending out to help these young people. Can you please speak briefly about that? Kenyan international students in America vis-a-vis COVID-19, and if the position has improved, so to speak.
Thank you so much, Mr. Amalwa, for the great, and thank you to all the speakers. Like you said, during COVID, it was a difficult journey for our international students because most of them were not able to, they could not work on campus. Once campus is closed, they could not work on campus. Some of them lost scholarships, like the track and field students who are on athletic scholarships. Because I work with a lot of I'm very connected with all the organizations that bring students like KENSAP, ASAP. KENSAP and ASAP focus on bringing international students on full scholarship, on athletic full scholarship. We have INSAP that is led by Professor Mike Boyd that focuses, they bring students on full academic scholarship, and most of them go to these Ivy League schools. So yes, there are a lot of programs out there that are really doing a lot of work. There's a program that is led by the governor of Western Gishu that really helps. We have several groups that helps to bring students, give them scholarships, link them to resources. So we've been working very closely with all those different organizations. But I think what happened during COVID was there were a lot of challenges and students could just not find ways to support themselves through the pandemic. So what we did as a KESID, that is a KESID is a Kenya International Students in Diaspora. That is a foundation that I actually founded and registered. It's a nonprofit organization that is registered in the state of North Carolina. So we came together, we have a great board members, we came together and we raised funds to support students. We were able to support, we raised over $12,000 that we were able to give students basic. We gave students ranging from $1,000 to $300 based on the needs. Now, we were not able to meet all the needs, but at least we gave those, those who are really needy, we're able to get them tickets, we're able to buy them basic foods. And then in the process, as we did that, we just did not give them money and left them there. We gave them money and we linked them to communities in those states. So if I had a student who was in Ida, for example, so we'd give them the money that we were able to raise and then would connect them to Kenyan communities in that state so they could support them. So we really worked very closely with them, and it was a needed organization. It came through, and we continue to work with the students. So one of the things I'll give you, for example, that really motivated me to register KSID in the state of North Carolina is through that pandemic, there are a lot of students who are not able to continue with their school because of finances. Now, in the state of North Carolina, if you have a nonprofit organization that is registered, I'm actually able to give in-state tuition for at least 5 students every semester through my organization. So if I had a student who was stuck, could not pay the international students, so in that process, I would say, well, come down to North Carolina, go to a community college, as long as you're volunteering for the organization. So we were able to support at least 5 students every semester to pay institution, and that really helped them through to navigate as they get themselves ready, for the next semester. So we continue to do that. We have a lot of students. Actually, even when we went to Texas A&M, we met international students there. So we continue to work with them. We've had several calls, like tomorrow we have a meeting at 1 o'clock with a group of students who are trying to go for interviews. So we provide resources from preparing them for interviews, preparing them to get here when they get to the US, how to get communication skills, mentoring, how to get mentors, how to look for internships. So we work very closely with CASA and all the community leaders to support our young students. Like we said, most of us came as international students, and we do not want any of our students to fall through the cracks. There's so many resources here, there's so many opportunities, and we work together to support our students.
Bless you, Professor Rotich. For us, especially who, let's be honest, more privileged than most, that's the best that we can do for our country and for our young ones. Professor Fred, how are you guys handling the classroom? How is it different from the way you used to teach in class, let's say 2 years ago, in 2019?
Chris, thank you so much. I agree with you. Texas A&M is a big university. We have close to over 70,000 students on our campus. And the university has a big state-owned impact. You're talking of close to almost $4 billion in terms of spending. And our research expenditure in a year is close to $1 billion. So we are talking of a very large institution that has really had impact in the world. We have over 400 living former students who are spread all over. You go to Nairobi, you'll find them. And you go anywhere else, you find them. And Professor Rotich will give a testimony on that. But let me go back to your question. I want to say this. I think what made a difference was when the vaccinations came. The vaccinations made a difference. And so as a university, what we've done is to encourage, not require. We encourage every faculty, every staff, and every student to get vaccination. The second thing that the university does is there's free testing for all students, all faculty, and all staff. And because of that, and then we are also aware now of the positive impact of wearing a mask. Okay? So since we started, you just said we've started this semester. We started in, I think it was August 30th. And we started with face-to-face. So the university said, we are going to have face-to-face classroom. And unless there's really a compelling reason, a professor can go remote for a week or 2 weeks and come back. And so far, this is almost now close to the 4th week. The campus is running very well. Learning is going on. Students, just like professors, had missed being on campus and being engaged. So when the students learned they were coming back to full face-to-face classroom, you should have seen the excitement on campus. And Professor Rotich, you saw when you're on campus, we went into some of the classrooms. We have what we call a 21st century classroom. The classroom actually sits 600 students. But the way the classroom is designed, we went in with the Kenyan delegation, and when we came out, our guide asked us, how many students do you think were in that classroom? And people said 200, 100. The classroom is designed in such a way that the professor stands in the middle of the classroom, and all the material being discussed is projected on screens all around, and the students are seated in a showroom type. So I think some of the innovations we have come up with in terms of facilities have enabled us to continue learning just prior to fall 2019, before COVID-19 struck. So far, we are having active face-to-face classroom engagement going on.
Awesome.
Of course, supplemented with technology. So professors can make material available. We use Canvas as a learning management system to supplement our face-to-face learning.
Awesome. That's awesome. Professor Otiso, we are talking about now the 21st century classroom, man. I'm very sure that one of these days we'll have classrooms in the clouds, you know. And this is one of the things that I really wanted to talk to you guys about. But before we talk about how you guys can bring some of these innovations to our country, Professor Otiso, how does your classroom look like post? I keep on saying post. Pre. I mean, we are in COVID-19. How is your classroom like now?
I think I'll echo what my colleagues have said, especially Professor Nafuko. The classrooms are what has ended up happening at Bowling Green State University is, of course, everybody wears a mask. Now that the FDA has approved some vaccines, they have become mandated as of November of this year. And of course, there is permission and allowance for people to kind of object to be vaccinated if they have a religious or a medical reason not to. But a lot of people have actually ended up being vaccinated already. There is weekly testing, as Professor Nafuko was saying. And also what we've done is to space out the classrooms for a bit. So, if it was originally holding, like, let's say 100 students, now it can be like 50, so that you actually have a little bit of room. And of course, the online management system, classroom management systems like Canvas also play a big role in terms of being able to allow some students actually to take their classes online. But what we are seeing is actually that a lot of them are more happy being in the classroom. And even in the professors, I think that they're also equally happy to be in the classroom. I think we're all social beings. This isolation and the Zoom, by the way, is great. And I can tell you for sure that we're not going to a period of what used to be pre-Zoom. Zoom is always going to be here. You notice that actually the technology has improved tremendously in the last 1 year. It used to be very bad connections, bad picture quality, but now a lot of things have actually gone into developing it and improving this technology. So I think going forward, what you're looking at is really a hybrid classroom. And quite frankly, there are going to be a lot of efficiencies that come from that, so that even people like us can now actually teach classrooms in Kenya very easily. So the whole idea of saying we don't have professors because we don't have a lot of them trained is increasingly becoming an excuse for failing to take advantage of the technologies that are available. Because remember, even some of these classrooms can be pre-recorded entirely and then played later on. Actually, in some ways, personally, I've enjoyed teaching online from the very beginning. And there have been times my students are in Japan, in Brazil, and whatever, and I actually like it that way, because in some ways you can even do more online because you have a lot more access to technology and those types of things. Now as we transition, I wanted to mention that for any students that are looking for visas in Kenya, the State Department issued an announcement on September 14th regarding M, F, and J academic visas. So that is something you can look on the State Department website, but the gist of it is that it's now possible to apply for a student visa without an interview, all right? So if students are stuck and they're trying to come to the States, that is an option that they should look into. And quite frankly, sometimes you might even be able to apply for an emergency visa and be allowed to come. But that is something I encourage every student to take a look at. But also remember that every embassy across the globe, every US embassy is going to implement that requirement differently. So I encourage them to look at our embassy, the US embassy in Nairobi, and see how they are implementing that interview-free visa approval.
Thanks, Professor. Thanks, Professor Tiso. Bob,
Yes.
You speak to us about the challenges that you've faced in the last 1.5 years because of COVID-19 in terms of bringing, our young talented students to America for further studies.
All right, thank you, Chris. Now, yes, we've had challenges in the program. I think when COVID hit us, we could not bring any student last fall, 2020, we didn't bring any student here because also even the lenders that work with us, they had put on hold lending because there was a lot of uncertainties in terms of, the economy and all that. So we could not bring in students, but we were able to bring students from January this year. We brought a couple of them. Then this fall, we just brought about 6 students, but we could have brought more. The problem was actually, most of the problems was to do with the visas. There's a huge backlog at the embassy, like you said earlier. You find out that sometimes when you try to put in your request for a student visa interview slot, you're getting like 6-7 months away. Like now, if you try to put in now, you'll get slots for next year. So that has been a challenge. Like this fall, you could have brought very many students. Right now, actually, as we speak, we have about around 40-something students who we are trying to complete the application processes to the schools and funding and all that to be completed so that now we can submit requests for visa slots. But it's going to be a challenge, because there's no available slot. And as Professor Kefa said, I think, yes, there was that announcement that students can be able to submit applications for a visa without actually having to attend the visa. But I think it's for those who have been given another visa before. Okay. If you are coming for the first time, seeking a student visa for the first time, I don't think it's possible not to attend a student visa interview. So that still poses a big challenge for a lot of our students because most of them, they are even flying out for the first time. So, it's not possible for them. But anyways, what we try to do and what we've been doing actually, even for those students who came this fall. So when we submitted those applications that we could get like maybe 2-3 months in the future, what we are doing is we kept on checking. I mean, it takes a lot of commitment and a lot of effort. You keep on checking like on a daily basis and try to see whether there is any, because sometimes, someone might have, put in a slot, but then I didn't pull out. So maybe a slot is available. So we kept on checking and sometimes students could get those appointments, but it's a lot of work. Like you have to keep on checking the system all the time. Now, also, at some point, also the embassy opened up expedited processing close to, I think, June, July, around there. So we were able to submit quite a number of students to get the visa slots. So I think also we're going to use the same approach even for those guys who are coming in spring. Like I said, we have about 40 students. We are hoping that we're going to be seeking student visas. We're going to do the same thing. If we get anything in the next year, we're going to keep on checking with them and see whether we can be able to find something. If you're not able to, at some point, I believe the embassy also will open up expedited processing for F1 visas, especially when it comes closer to January. Around maybe November, December, there we expect the same thing. And we should be able to put in our, interview slots at that point. But yeah, that has been the challenge. Hopefully, maybe next year things will get better because also our Kenya Airlift program is growing tremendously. Right now, we have over 300 students who are in the program, waiting to come to the US. We have schools that are continually partnering with us. Recently, we signed an agreement with the University of Alabama in Huntsville, which is a very good school. We also are in the process also of partnering with the Grand Valley State University in Michigan. Also back in Kenya, we have also partners who are onboarding into the program. For example, University of Nairobi, we are in the process of signing an agreement with them. Also Chuka University also, and Embu University. So we are seeing a lot of interest in our program, and hopefully maybe once things keeps on improving, we should be able to see a lot of students coming to this other side.
Thanks, Bob. I want to go directly back to Professor Tiso, because this is something that we've really discussed in the past. About 5 years ago, we were talking about how, you know, all this Kenyan talent. I always tell people that, you know, there's no university or college in America where you go to and don't find Kenyan professors and people who are in fact, you know, in charge of a dean of students, whole programs and whole projects and whole departments. And 5 years ago, we were antagonizing with Professor Tiso about how we can give back to our country, Kenya. And at that time, we were toying with the idea of how about Professor Tiso having just, even if it's just one class with Kenyatta University, his university where he studied art. That's why I met this guy. That's where he went to, his alumni. Even if Professor Tiso can just have one class a week, that's a virtual class. But that time the issue was the internet and the connectivity. There's so much that we've learned about COVID-19 and the classroom. Professor Tiso, can we revisit that and please speak to that?
Yes, we can revisit that. I think what was different back then was bad internet and also actually a slow uptake of this technology in Kenya. Things have changed big time since then. And even myself, there was a time I tried to entice some Kenyan universities to teach online, but you could tell that they were not ready for it. So COVID-19 actually was a blessing in disguise in that regard. Ironically, by the way, I did publish a paper last year, not to praise the disease, but actually to look at the silver linings of COVID-19. There are a lot of changes globally that actually are going to come about because of the crisis. People do very well when they are pushed to the wall. And obviously, I need to be clear that, of course, people have lost family members. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that any existential crisis like the one that COVID-19 has brought ends up making us very, very innovative in all areas, including in education. So we do see that Kenyan universities have fully embraced online learning right now. I don't think they had a choice. And quite frankly, also what happened in Kenya because of COVID-19 is that, remember, Chris, in Kenya, there have always been two universities that have been competing. By the time COVID came, the administrative university had actually won over the academic university. In other words, the administrator side of the university had actually overwhelmed the academic side of the business. COVID-19 shut down the administrative university, and the academic university was forced basically to innovate and continue teaching, which is actually what happened, because a lot of these administrators were found at home, not able to go physically to the university, but the professors would transition to online, and in fact, the university continued teaching. So if they play their cards right, this crisis may have actually caused a shift that has been long overdue in the Kenyan university, a technological shift and a shift whereby the academic university supersedes the administrative university. So then now you have this technological situation whereby now we are able to teach even from here. So I think in general, what has also been missing other than just the technological structures is also even the Kenya government itself having the structures that actually allow us to go back and make a difference. So in that regard, I'd like to highlight one particular program that has been very helpful, the Carnegie African Diaspora Program, that actually has benefited a number of us, including myself and Professor Rotich. I'm not sure, Professor Nafuko, whether you benefited, but we can maybe hear you. Look like you have done it as well. But what it is basically a program that allows the Africa-born scholars like ourselves to go back and teach and offer all manner of support to our universities, research support, mentoring graduate students, mentoring young scholars, and those types of things. And I've been able to go back to Kenya twice under that grant, and I think Professor Rotich and Nafuku, I think you've done the same thing. That program has actually been quite successful. And in fact, the alumni of that program are meeting in Washington, DC in the first week of October to look at how, in fact, the program can now be rolled out. So in that connection then, this lack of structures, which has now been demonstrated effectively by the Carnegie African Diaspora Program, is actually the context in which we have actually, as CASA, been proposing the Kenya Diaspora Fellowship, which essentially domesticates the Carnegie African Diaspora Program, so that now it becomes a Kenyan program. It's just like the Fulbright that we are all familiar with. And one of the things that actually came out of this year's CASA conference is to see, I was actually quite pleased to see the PS mention it in his remarks. We've been trying to work with them from early in the year. And actually, I have to give due credit to Ambassador Namkwesi, who is also the PS now, that is actually very keen and very enthusiastic about implementing that program. And hopefully, he's going to push it forward and therefore create a formal structure that will allow us actually to give back. So it's not that Professor Nafuku has never wanted to give back, but we have always had this thing whereby he has to give back using his own resources. He's there visiting family. Now he has to stop visiting family so he can go and say something at the University of Nairobi or Kenyatta University. And what we're trying to do, which is what other countries have done, is actually have formal structures. And as I conclude, that is actually what I'd like to emphasize, that it has never been the lack of willingness on the part of scholars like myself to give. What has been lacking is structures that formally and in a systematic manner allow us to give back. And by the way, these things are envisaged in the Kenya Diaspora Policy. It's just that they have not been implemented. So the hope is that maybe the Kenya Diaspora Fellowship and a number of other similar supporting structures will be put in place to allow us to give. But in the meantime, a lot of us have been giving, even voluntarily, even when we are on our own time, we are visiting family. Pretty much, like, as far as I can remember, from about 2015, every time I'm back, I do stop by local universities, at least one of them. I do stop by local high schools and do, guest speeches to these individuals and encourage them. So a lot of us are actually engaged, but what we need is a way of quantifying this impact and finding best practices of being able to continue giving back.
Thanks, Professor Otiso. Professor Rotich, in fact, that is very critical in the sense that, it's much more easier to work with structures and structured engagement than just a one-off. You are very well connected with these people. And the good thing is that right now, the PS, the people like Nabukwesi is an educator. That's somebody who understands education very well. Do you think that's something that KESA can spearhead, especially right now that you're the president? Because one of the things I know about you is that you get it done.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wamalwa and Professor Otiso. Like Professor Otiso said, it is not the lack of interest. We are very interested. We want to engage. Professor Nafuku, Otiso, and myself have gone on this Carnegie Fellowship, so we're really looking forward to that. I think what is really exciting at this moment is that P.S. Nabukwesi is not only an educator, he's also a former diaspora, so he really understands the value of the diaspora. He understands the passion that we have. And when he highlighted during one of his speeches was the interest of the Department of Education is in his department, the State Department of University Education and Research was promoting scholarly scientific research and innovation work in Kenya. So I think he's very interested and he's very ready to do that. He's also interested in staff and student exchange, skills transfer and sharing of technical expertise in developing areas, dissemination of information, publication, and scholarly work in Kenya. So those are some of the areas. One way that we can do this very effectively is if they can domesticate this Carnegie Diaspora Fellowship Program that most of us, we have so many members in KESA who have been involved in this, who have participated in this. So we are more than willing, we are more than ready, and I think we're really excited about that. And the fact that he brought all the key leaders from the ministry to come to this conference, and he assured us that we are ready. He's ready to work with us. He's ready to work with us. So we will continue to.
Professor Fred Nafuho, the structures are taking shape. Fortunately, you are one of the people who've started those structures. Given that you are in one of the biggest universities in America, I speak to the same thing. There's a way in which you guys can give back to the country, and COVID-19 has shown you the way. What's the way forward?
Well, Chris, I agree with what you just said, and let me emphasize what my colleagues, Professor Tiso and Professor Rotich have said. We need formal structures. Formal structures allows us to engage in meaningful collaborations. So in our institution here in the United States, anything you do outside your work, you have to sign a form called conflict of interest and conflict of commitment. And conflict of commitment comes like this. So if I teach a course here, Foundations of Human Resource Development, and Kenyatta University, my alma mater, and our alma mater approaches me and says, we would like you to teach this course, I have to let my institution know, because that's intellectual capital. If we have formal structures like Memorandum of Understanding between Texas A&M and the one we just signed with the Ministry of Education, then we can do this without any objection. For example, when I visited Kenyatta University in 2017 during summer on Carnegie Fellowship, my university was proud to say, we allow you to go to Kenya to make a contribution under the Carnegie Fellowship. So my 2 months at Kenyatta University, I was engaged in developing a strategic plan for their research unit, which had just been established. So I focused, I was engaged, I interacted with faculty, with students. So the future, the way going forward, is having formal structures.
I guess we've run out of time, but I want just to alert our viewers that this discussion is followed with a very comprehensive news story at Standard Digital. It's attached to this. So if you want to really know about what happened during the KESA conference, especially in detail, please go online, Standard Digital, and read about especially the speech from PS Nabukwesi, and also the Kenyan ambassador, Mr. Mayo, who is the Kenyan ambassador in the US here. We've run out of time, but this is, I'm a trained teacher. Most of these guys are my colleagues from KU. So I take things around education very seriously, and I get excited when I meet some of these people who went beyond me. Professor Kefa, Professor Rotich, Professor Nafuho. These are people who, tulianza pamoja, but at least know them. They didn't fall by the wayside like me, but at least now, the way things happen is that I'm happy to host them on our show. So these are some of the things that we're going to be discussing in our show, Diaspora, Home and Abroad. Like I say, this is the bridge across the Indian Ocean. We have all these talented Kenyans, people who owe what they have and who they are to that small country called Kenya. And so we are going to hold their feet to the fire to give back to the community. I want to thank Bob. Bob is a young man, but like he said, he came here as an international student and he saw the need, so he's working on the need. These are the kind of people that we want. People who identify the need and they go out to solve the problem. Again, my name is Chris Omalwa. I've been host Diaspora, Home and Abroad. And just before I sign off, let me alert you that Diaspora Live Show is coming back. The same old engaging stories, but this time it's more in terms of special features. This is we go deep into our personal stories. This is Diaspora Live Show will be more about personal experiences. And, it's been my pleasure hosting you on this show. Please tune in again next week as we continue our discussions. Have a great weekend, guys.